This is not the first time people have heard rhetoric which is at odds with what they see. It's not the first time that people in this part of the world have listened to foreign armies coming in and saying that, of course, this is for your own good, and then seeing repeatedly, again and again and again and again, that these promises were not kept.
In 1917, British expeditionary forces under the leadership of Sir Stanley Maude marched into Baghdad and began a brutal decades-long occupation, which would lead to the deaths of tens of thousands of both Arabs and British. Shortly after the occupation of the city, General Maude issued the following proclamation: "Our armies do not come into your cities and lands as conquerors or enemies, but as liberators." It was a lie that would be retold nearly a century later, when coalition forces rolled into Baghdad during Operation Iraqi Freedom.
For many Iraqis, that history of being ruled by the British, right, is a fundamental element of their national narrative. Every child in Iraq is taught about how the British came and fought and conquered and subdued and ruled in Iraq.
We are going to a place with the longest memory on earth, and ignoring history, big mistake.
The folly of British imperialism is commemorated in a forgotten cemetery outside Baghdad, where Sir Stanley Maude and thousands of British troops are buried. It was an adventure from which British imperialism in the Middle East would never recover. T.E. Lawrence, the legendary Lawrence of Arabia, described the British adventure as an unnecessary disaster brought about by a combination of hubris and short-sightedness. In his memoir, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, he wrote, "Britain was then bursting with confidence in an easy and early victory."
The United States, with its enormous military might, could not win in Vietnam, nor the French in Algeria, nor a more recent example, the Russians in Afghanistan. And that should tell us something about the ultimate futility of using military means against a population that simply does not want to be occupied by a foreign power.
When you go into a third world country where there is a tradition of nationalism and national identity and try and occupy them and try and rule them that way, while at the same time taking control over their most important natural resources, this is not going to work. I mean, the US has tried this so often in so many places, and it's always come to grief.
The most powerful and technologically advanced military in the world left little doubt about the outcome of the war. In a matter of weeks, coalition forces decimated the Iraqi opposition. But superiority in the field meant little when it came to winning the peace.
The incredible incompetence, the refusal under any circumstances to take any kind of professional advice, whether from the military, whether from the intelligence community, whether from the diplomats, whether from the academics, the scorn, disdain, and persecution of knowledge about this region by this administration, the faith-based, fact-free foreign policy that they've been running in this part of the world, I think has severely harmed the United States.
Consumed with the political power 9/11 had delivered into their hands, the administration chose to ignore lessons of the past and the advice of the experts. It was a blunder for which America continues to pay a price in blood and treasure.